everyone, I'm Shannon. Thank you for watching and welcome to today's video. I'm continuing on my series of room selection at various Walt Disney World resorts, and I am focusing on first all the Disney Vacation Club resorts. So we are now moving on to the largest resort at Walt Disney World, and that is Saratoga Springs Resort and Spa. Now, my family and I own at Saratoga Springs, but we've never stayed there, if you can believe it. So this one, I actually really had to reach out to the DVC community to get some input on what areas people liked, what they prefer, and then kind of do some research from there. So that's what I'm going on. I don't know if it'll change. Sometimes I'm spot on of what I liked when I did my research for Old Key West, and then we stayed there. I love the area that I requested. It was exactly where I would request again. But since I've never stayed at Saratoga Springs, I'm not sure. So this is going on the research as well as reaching out to the DVC community and what people have shared with myself. So there are two categories at Saratoga Springs, and that is standard and preferred. Preferred is going to be near the carriage house, which is basically the main hub, the lobby, the restaurants, etc. And then the Congress Park, which is closest to Disney Springs. This was already separated when we bought into DVC. However, I do understand that it may be switched after the initial launch of the resort, because a lot of people requesting the Springs and Congress Park, so they decided to make it two different categories. Correct me if I'm wrong, I'm not sure, but that is what I believe happened. So as I did mention, this is the largest resort. It also includes 60 treehouse villas, but I'm not going to be including them today because I think those are a separate kind of just a separate category, and there's 60 of them, and to be honest, I need to do a little bit more research. So I really wanted to focus on Saratoga Springs. Again, this is the largest resort, so I got enough to cover today. So let's get into the room breakdowns. First, we have studio standard. There are 264. Preferred, there's 168. One bedroom standard, 264. Preferred, 168. Two bedroom lock-offs, guess what? Standard 264, preferred 168. And then two bedroom dedicated, there are 220 standard and 140 preferred. And then for those beautiful 3-bedroom grand villas, there are 22 standard and 14 preferred. There are 18 buildings with 46 units in each building. So like what I did with Old Key West, I'm going to be focusing on areas rather than specific rooms. I am going to share which room we would request if we were staying in preferred and if we were staying in standard. So I will give you and share with you what I would recommend for ourselves, but everybody's different. So I'm going to give you a couple tips as far as, if you book preferred, things to consider, and if you book standard, things to consider. I will say there was only one area that people said basically no one recommended, and I'll go over that as well. So here we go. So we are going to start, as always, on touringplans.com website for the resort. So here is Disney Saratoga Springs Resort and Spa. And here is where you can find all the information that you want to know regarding Saratoga Springs. It gives you some information of where to check in and some of the resort rooms. Now, these pictures are a little outdated. Saratoga Springs, right now, it is October 2020. It is currently going through a refurbishment. They are almost complete with the preferred section. So Congress Park is done, the Springs is almost done, and now they are starting on the paddock. So I'm going to be talking about the refurbishment, and when I talk about the rooms, it'll be the new refurbishment, because hopefully by the time you watch this, the rooms have all been completed. So here is some information. I will say this bar area is now gone in the 1-bedroom, so there is no longer a bar, which I think opens up a lot of space. We've had this before and we never really used it. And now, and I will post a link below, I'll find a video of someone that there is now a Murphy bed, a TV, and the Murphy bed, the twin Murphy bed, which now enables the 1 bedrooms to sleep 5. So it also has, I'll show you here. Here is the floor plan. So let's talk about the 1 bedroom since we were just talking about it. Here we go. Here's the kitchen. This now is a fold down, full like wall unit Murphy bed that comes down in the 1 bedroom. And then this area right here is also the twin size Murphy bed. So you can actually sleep 3 comfortably here. There is no longer a pull-out couch. Here is the king size bed in the 1 bedroom. And then this is the standard, 1 bedroom. Here is the studio. Now the studio no longer has a pull-out couch either. It also has the Murphy bed. It does not have the fold-down sleeper, so it does not have the twin. So the studios now sleep 4 and the 1 bedrooms sleep 5. So keep that in mind. And if you are going to be doing a 2 bedroom lock off, they are going to sleep 9, which is fantastic. So here are some pictures of the grand villa. And so all this information. So any information that you need to find regarding Saratoga Springs is on this page, and I will post the link below. So for Saratoga Springs, I'm going to do something a little different, and that is because the resort is just so large. I needed to give you more of a visual to give a better understanding of the resort. So this is the map that you would get upon check-in to show you the different areas. So there are 5 specific areas of Saratoga Springs: Grandstand, the Carousel, the Paddock, the Springs, and Congress Park. 3 of those, the Grandstand, the Carousel, the Paddock, are standard view, and then the Springs and Congress Park are considered preferred. So let's come in. This is the main entrance. So you go in through the security gate, and I am going to follow the area of how a bus would come in. So that gives you an idea. So the first bus stop would come in and go to the Grandstand. Then they're going to come through, stop at the Carousel, which the bus stop is right over here. Drive a little further and stop at the Paddock. That is the 3rd stop. The 4th stop on the bus route is Congress Park. And then it would finish up over here at the Springs. So that gives you an overview of the buses. One of the things that comes right to mind right now is because of social distancing, does the bus get to the Springs? Are they dispatching more buses to go to each of the areas because you can't, crowd those buses in? So that is something to consider. And now I have heard from people, with the exception of rush hour right before park opening, people haven't really had much of a problem on the buses at Saratoga Springs because they are dispatching quite a few buses. But just wanted to keep that in mind. You always want to allow enough time when taking a Disney bus because, sometimes they're just not on your side. So at Saratoga Springs, the carriage house is the main area, and you can see everything you have here. You have the lobby, concierge, Disney Vacation Club information, resort airline check-in, and right here, C is the Disney Vacation Club Preview Center. L, you have the Senses Spa, and then you also have, the Turf Club Bar and Grill right here. E is the quick service, which is called Artist Palette. And F, you have High Rock Spring Pool area. That is the main feature pool. And N, you have the arcade. And J would be horsing around rentals. Now, I believe the gym is in the spa area. I have heard that this is the best gym on property at a resort. So I have never seen it personally, but I have been told that by cast members that the best gym on property is at Saratoga Springs because it is part of the spa. So there are basically 2 featured pools. You have the one here in the High Rock, and then the Paddock also has a featured pool. And what makes it a featured pool is both of them have slides. So that is something to consider. So the Springs, as I said, is a preferred area, as is Congress Park is a preferred area. Now Congress Park has a quiet pool, but it also has a playground. It also has these rooms right here, have amazing views of Disney Springs, as well as a quick walkway to Disney Springs. And let's see. So I think most people, if you're going to splurge for preferred, they can kind of go toss up, but I think most people prefer Congress Park because if you're splurging for preferred, you want that quick walkway to Disney Springs. I will also say right over here is the boat to Disney Springs, so it's right in front of the carriage house. And then over here is the Treehouse Villas. And we're not going to go over the Treehouse Villas today because I believe that's just a completely separate area. There's 60 of them, and I honestly need to do a little bit more research. So this is the overview of Disney Springs, and I'm going to get into the map now on Touring Plans. So now we are back at touringplans.com's website and their view of Disney's Saratoga Springs Resort and Spa. And this is where you can request your room. So I'm going to focus on preferred category first. And as I stated, we're not going to specifically go into studios, 1 bedrooms, 2 bedrooms, because we're going to focus more on areas that matters more in single buildings such as Bay Lake Tower or Boulder Ridge, where here it's more spread out. You really want to focus on what area you want. So the 2 areas that are preferred are the Springs and Congress Park. So for Congress Park, if you are booking the preferred category for the proximity to walk to Disney Springs, you want Congress Park. If you are booking preferred because you want to be close to the carriage house or you plan on taking the ferry to Disney Springs, then you want the Springs area. They are pretty close together. I don't think there are a long walk. I personally have never stayed at Saratoga Springs, even though I own there, but I've heard that the walk isn't bad to either one. So I think you have the option of both. You're not going to go wrong. I will say in asking people what their favorite area is, most people said if they book preferred, they prefer Congress Park. And I think that most people who book preferred prefer to be able to walk to Disney Springs. The ferry does leave every 20 minutes, just like the one at Old Key West. It leaves every 20 minutes on the hour 20 and 40. So you have that. And again, it's going to leave you at a different area of Disney Springs, whereas if you walk, it's going to be quite a long walk. Now, it's Disney Springs. It's a nice walk. But if you have maybe a reservation at the boathouse, maybe you want to take the ferry. So now Springs, if it were me, I'm not sure where we would stay. I think it would depend on the type of trip. Now, we likely would stay standard because I am very frugal with points. So if I were to stay at Saratoga Springs, I would book standard. But if I were to book preferred, it would depend on the type of trip. If we were planning on doing more of a resort staycation using the pool, then I would want to stay at the Springs because my son wants to be in a pool with a slide. We go to the gym. I probably would get some spa time. There's a community hall. All of that is in this area. We would want to be in the Springs. Now, if it was a trip where we planned on going more to the parks and also spending evenings in Disney Springs, then I probably would stay in Congress Park. And let's say we don't plan on going to the pool. Typically, we don't go to the pool a lot when we're at Disney, maybe one night or one afternoon, depending. So, and especially when we go in the wintertime, a lot of times it's just too cold. So I would probably recommend, and we would probably request Congress Park. Now, which building? Well, if I'm going to stay in Congress Park, I am going to request this building right here, just because it's closer. But again, I think I would just request the Congress Park area. So let's click on this and let's look at a studio. And I'm going to show you this one. I looked earlier and has an amazing view. I mean, look at that view. I mean, you have, this is now Paddlefish. This says Fulton's Crab House. This picture's a little old. You've got that. You've got the boathouse. There's where the ferry drops you off. I mean, just a spectacular view of the area. And this picture right here, you can see also right here is paddlefish. There's the aqua car, and then right over here you can see the little tail of it. The balloon is right over here in this area. So just spectacular view of from the Congress Park area. Again, any of those buildings in Congress Park are going to have that spectacular water view of Saratoga Springs. So again, or of Disney Springs, I'm sorry. And then, so again, I think with preferred, the reason why it's preferred is because everybody wants to be in one of these 7 buildings. Personally, I likely would choose Congress Park unless we planned on doing more of a staycation. And if it was more of a staycation, I would request the Springs. So now let's focus on the standard view area. So again, there are 3 areas: the grandstand, the carousel, the paddock. Now I will say I went to the DVC community because I haven't stayed at Saratoga Springs myself, and it was probably about 60-40. 60% loved the paddock, 40% loved the grandstand. The consensus though is that no one loved the carousel. It's not a horrible area to stay at, but I will say they said it was the least desirable. There's no pool. There's a bus stop. It is I think the second bus stop, but there's no pool. There's no quick service. It's just very quiet. So not the best area to stay at. It's got you have a walk to the paddock area. So again, not a bad area, just not very desirable. Now, as far as the grandstand, both the grandstand and the paddock have pools. Now, the paddock pool has a slide. So Saratoga Springs is unique that it basically has 2 featured pools. The paddock has a pool with a slide. It also has a quick service, and it has a dedicated play area for kids under 48 inches. The grandstand has a quiet pool. It also has a little play area for kids. So both have that. I think it just depends on what you prefer. If you prefer a less chaotic pool, something a little bit more quiet, and you want to have that first bus stop at Saratoga Springs so you can be the king of the bus and get on first, then you want to stay at the grandstand. If you're like me, we would probably want to stay at the paddock because, again, my son, a pool doesn't count unless there's a slide. So we would stay at the paddock. Those would be the 2 areas. I don't recommend requesting the carousel unless you have your car and you just don't plan on going. You just basically a park intensive trip and you're going to be driving to and from the park. So that's where I would recommend. Now, with that, which buildings do I recommend in these 2? So let's start with the grandstand. So the grandstand, if I were to choose, I would pick this building here, which is, I believe, building 15, and we'll click that, and there we go. So there's building 15, and let's just go here. This is the ground floor, 8130. You can see that's the little kids area, play area by the pool. Really great. That's where I would recommend building 15 in the grandstand. And then in my notes, I would put, I want to stay in the grandstand area. But as I stated before, if I were to stay in the paddock, I would recommend my building would be this one right here, and that is building 10. This is where I recommend, and let's see if we can pull up some pictures here. And look at that. It's got a nice lake view. This is ground floor. Again, I'm not going to go into all the views. You can look at them. You can look at them yourself on touring plans. You have the little bridge. This, I believe, is the Springs area. That's the carriage house. This is the little bridge that leads you over to that area. It's not a bad walk. But this would be, I think, building 10, the 5500s. This is the room numbers. Let's go back to the resort map, kind of give you an idea why I picked that. So there's the pool. There's the bus stop. There's that little bridge I was telling you, bringing you to Carriage House. So if we wanted to take the ferry over to Disney Springs, we could just walk over here. If we wanted to walk to Disney Springs, we could just kind of head over this way. So it's a really central location without the extra points. This would be where I would stay. So let me click here, and let's say we're going to click here, and I have a sample trip already ready. So click here to make this room request. So here's our sample. Here we go. And all of a sudden it populated 5507. So it populated automatically my resort, that number. Let's go to configure room request. And there's my fake email. And let's put 123. And here you go. So building the paddock, floor 1, west facing room, and it gives the examples. And what I would put is 1 ground floor room, and then 2 building 10 preference, and then 3 the paddock area. So now I have listed my preferences. So if 5507 is not available, they now know what my preferences are. My preferences first is to be in a ground floor room. My next preference is to be in building 10, then the paddock area. So they're going to go in that. So let's say building 10, there's no ground floor, but there is at the next building. So hopefully they will move me to building 11 and put me on the ground floor there in the paddock area. So let's just save that. But that's how you request the room, and that's what I would do. Let's go back to the resort and see. So that would be my recommendation if you're staying in a standard. It really, again, with Saratoga Springs, the resort is so large, you're not really worried about the view here. Unless you really want that view of Disney Springs, then you want to stay in Congress Park. Grandstand, I believe these buildings right here will also give you a nice view. Maybe not as nice over here, but a nice view of Disney Springs. But if you're more worried about transportation, being in a central location, and not spending those extra points, personally, I would go for the paddock area. If you're looking for more low-key, something quiet that's still pretty central, this is still a pretty quick walk over to Carriage House. I mean, it's definitely faster than the paddock. So the grandstand is a really nice little walk. I would say the grandstand might be for you. Again, carousel, try to avoid it if you can. Obviously, someone has to stay there, but hopefully it's not you. So here we go, and that's my recommendations for Disney's Saratoga Springs Resort and Spa. So there you have it. That's what I would request if we were staying at Saratoga Springs. Again, we haven't stayed there. I feel like there will be a time, and I think it's going to be coming up soon with the 50th anniversary and probably the backlog of points. I think we're going to need that 11-month window, and I don't think we're going to get in anywhere else at 7 months. So Saratoga Springs, we will probably be seeing you in 2021. With that, that's the end of this video. If you liked it, make sure to click and subscribe, ring the bell. That way you get a notification every time I post a new video. I will be back next week with 3 new resorts and covering which rooms I recommend and using the Touring Plans app to request those rooms. With that, bye everyone.